Vance Corporation, where power is concentrated in the hands of the patriarchal father, Adrian Vance. His son, Ethan, the ambitious young CEO, has always lived under the shadow of his father. And then there is Isabella, the beautiful, sharp, powerful stepwife, but secretly lonely in her marriage to her older husband. Everything starts with meaningful glances, sympathetic conversations about loneliness and pressure. But what will happen when that fragile understanding turns into an irresistible attraction, a forbidden passion that blossoms between the stepson and his stepmother? The Family Burning Secret is not a normal romantic love story. This is a sinful, clandestine, and dangerous love affair, taking place right under the roof of the most powerful man in the family. Can love survive when built on betrayal? Will the ambition for power overwhelm emotions? When this terrible secret is at risk of being exposed, when the father begins to suspect, the fire of passion can turn into a fire that burns everything: the family's reputation, career, and even the people involved. Will they dare to trade everything to be together? Or will the truth being revealed lead to an irreversible, tragic ending? Prepare yourself for breathtaking twists and a haunting ending. Don't miss The Secret of Burning the Family. The atmosphere in the Vance Corporation boardroom is always thick with power and tightly controlled tension, like the thin air on the highest mountain peak. Adrian Vance, at the age of 58, sits in the chair, his majestic appearance, his salt and pepper hair neatly trimmed, his steel-like eyes scanning every face in the room. He is the embodiment of absolute power, the man who built Vance Corporation from a family business into a powerful multi-industry empire. His every word is an order, every frown carries the weight of billions of dollars. Sitting a few seats away is Ethan Vance, his only son, the CEO of the corporation in his 30s. Ethan possesses the intelligence, sharpness, and ambition that is no less than his father, but he always feels like he has to struggle under Adrian's huge shadow. His every achievement seems to be overlooked by his father. Every idea is scrutinized through the prism of the patriarch's experience and patriarchy. Their father-son relationship resembles a long-running Cold War, full of hidden disagreements and bitter lack of recognition. And sitting next to Adrian, like a queen on her own throne, is Isabella Rossi Vance. 40 years old, she is Adrian's second wife, having married him about 8 years ago when Ethan was in his rebellious early 20s. Isabella is exquisitely beautiful, stunningly beautiful. She is not just a beautiful wife to the older billionaire, but also a smart, powerful woman in her own right. A successful art investor before her marriage, she now serves on the board of the Vance family's charitable foundation and wields considerable social influence. Her appearance is always perfect, in control, her smile can melt ice, but her eyes hide an indescribable distance. Her relationship with Adrian, in many people's eyes, resembled a strategic alliance rather than a passionate marriage. The meeting that day was particularly tense. Ethan was presenting his plans to expand into green technology, an area he believed was the future of the corporation. He was well prepared, with compelling numbers, a clear vision. But Adrian kept interrupting, asking skeptical questions, focusing on short-term risks rather than long-term potential. "Too risky, Ethan," Adrian said, his voice deadpan. "We're Vance Corporation, not a fledgling venture capital fund. Focus on what we do best." "But father, if we don't innovate, we'll be left behind," Ethan tried to argue, his voice strained. "The numbers show." "The numbers can be manipulated," Adrian interrupted. "My experience tells me this is a time to be cautious." The atmosphere in the room became heavy. Ethan clenched his fists under the table, the familiar feeling of helplessness and anger rising again. He glanced at Isabella. She kept her face calm, but for a brief moment, their eyes met. He saw a strange look in her eyes, not open approval, but something like understanding, a silent recognition that he had never received from his father. The look was fleeting, but it left a strange impression on Ethan. After the meeting, Ethan stayed late at the office, trying to shake off the feeling of failure. Isabella knocked on the door and entered, a cup of herbal tea in her hand. "You look like you need this," she said softly. placing the cup on his desk. "It's been a long day." "Thanks, Isabella," Ethan said, surprised. They rarely had such personal interactions. The stepmother-stepdaughter relationship was always one of distance, though outwardly respectful. "Adrian can be too rigid sometimes," Isabella said absently, looking out the window. "He has a hard time accepting ideas that aren't his own." "You think so too?" Ethan asked, a little hopeful. Isabella turned to look at him, a small smile on her lips. "I think your plan has potential, Ethan. It just takes time to convince him. Don't be discouraged." Isabella's unexpected encouragement warmed Ethan's heart. She was not only beautiful, intelligent, but also had a keen sense of perspective. They talked for a while about work, about the challenges of the market. Ethan found himself drawn to her intellect and sophistication. Isabella, on the other hand, saw in the young man the same intelligence, suppressed ambition, and loneliness she felt in her marriage. Such interactions began to happen more frequently, though still discreetly. When Adrian was abroad, Ethan and Isabella had more opportunities to work together on joint projects for the company or the charity. They discovered surprising similarities: a love of classical music, sharp political judgments, and a feeling of suffocation in the Vance family cage. One evening, after working together on a complicated charity issue, they sat in the vast library of the Vance mansion. It was raining lightly outside. The space was quiet, except for the sound of rain and the soft rustle of pages turning. "Sometimes I wonder, is it really worth it?" Isabella spoke suddenly, her voice low, her eyes staring into the darkness outside. "Wealth, status, in return for loneliness and masks to wear every day." Ethan was stunned by the unexpected confession. He had never seen Isabella so vulnerable. "I know how it feels," he replied softly. "Always trying to prove yourself, always having to live up to other people's expectations." They looked at each other, a deep sympathy born between two souls who felt lost in their own families. In that moment, Ethan no longer saw Isabella as his stepmother, his father's powerful wife. He saw a woman who was attractive, intelligent, complex, and perhaps yearning for a real connection. His gaze lingered on her lips, on her smooth white skin, on the elegant curve of her neck. A dangerous, forbidden feeling began to creep into his mind. Isabella also sensed the change in Ethan's eyes. She saw admiration, longing, and a hidden fire in the young man's blue eyes. She knew it was wrong, dangerous, but the loneliness and disappointment in her marriage to Adrian made it impossible for her to completely ignore the growing attraction between them. They tried to pull themselves back to reality, to change the subject, but the atmosphere was no longer the same. The smoldering fire had begun to burn under the ashes of family rules and constraints. The harmony and hidden attraction between Ethan and Isabella grew stronger, like an unstoppable undercurrent. Circumstances seemed to have deliberately created conditions for them. Adrian was increasingly busy with long business trips and personal concerns, leaving a large void in the family and in the daily operations. Ethan and Isabella were forced to work more closely together to solve the problems that arose at Vance Corporation and the charity. They became a perfect pair at work. Ethan admired Isabella's sharpness, strategic vision, and skillful negotiation skills. Isabella was impressed by Ethan's decisiveness, innovative thinking, and quick problem-solving ability. They complemented each other perfectly, creating a formidable synergy. Their private meetings were no longer dry about work, but were interspersed with lively discussions about ideas, frank sharing of views, and rare laughter when they found common ground. Closeness at work led to emotional closeness. The defensive walls gradually came down. Ethan began to confide in Isabella about the pressure he had to endure from his father, about the ambitions he cherished but was not recognized. Isabella also shared with Ethan for the first time about the loneliness in his loveless marriage, about the feeling of being just a beautiful ornament in Adrian's world, about her secret desires for a deeper connection. They found in each other the understanding, acceptance, and empathy they had long lacked. Isabella saw Ethan not just as her husband's son, but as a young, talented, sensitive man capable of giving her the warmth that Adrian never had. Ethan saw Isabella not just as a stepmother, but as a charming, intelligent, strong woman, the only one who seemed to truly see and acknowledge his worth. The physical attraction became undeniable. Every time they were near each other in the closed conference room, in the private elevator, or in the quiet library of the mansion, the air was thick with sexual tension. An accidental touch of a hand as they reached for a document, a gaze that lingered too long on the other's lips, shortness of breath as they stood close to each other to look at a blueprint. Both were acutely aware of the dangerous fire burning between them, but neither had the strength to extinguish it. Fear and guilt fought fiercely against the growing desire. The fateful night finally arrived. It was after a large charity gala hosted by the Hawthorne Foundation. Ethan and Isabella had worked hard together to make the event a success. Adrian, after giving an opening speech and a few pleasantries, had excused himself and left early, claiming to be tired. Ethan and Isabella stayed until the end, finishing the remaining work. When they were alone in the quiet banquet hall, amid the warm yellow lights and lingering music, they looked at each other. The success of the party, the light wine, and the long simmering tension had finally broken through all the barriers. "We did it?" Ethan said softly, his voice slightly hoarse with fatigue and unnamed emotions. "Yes," Isabella smiled, her eyes sparkling as she looked at him. "You did great, Ethan." He stepped closer to her, unable to take his eyes off her plump red lips and inviting gaze. "It's not just me," he whispered. "We make a great team, Isabella." The distance between them closed. He could feel her warm breath on his cheek. Her delicate perfume wafted through the air, intoxicating him. All thoughts of morality, of consequences, of her powerful father vanished. All that remained was a burning desire and a forbidden but irresistible feeling. He leaned down, and their lips found each other. The kiss was tentative at first, then quickly became passionate, as if they had been waiting for this moment for a long time. It was a kiss of compassion, of release, but also tinged with the bitterness of guilt and betrayal. They knew they had crossed a line from which there could be no turning back. That night, they belonged to each other completely, in secret and furtive. The forbidden love affair officially begins, like a fire that both warms lonely souls and threatens to burn everything. They rush into each other with all their pent-up passion, finding in each other the understanding and pleasure they lack. But after each clandestine encounter, guilt and fear torment them. They must act in front of Adrian, in front of everyone, living under the constant tension of hiding a shocking secret that could destroy the entire Vance family. Ethan and Isabella's secret relationship is like a powerful drug. It brings excitement, passion, and a sense of real life that they both crave, but at the same time it gnaws at them with constant guilt and fear. The clandestine encounters become more frequent, more daring. They tried to find ways to be together, whether it was just a few minutes in the office, a discreet touch under the table during a meeting, or a night of secret flings at a private apartment Ethan had secretly rented. That intense passion began to affect their lives and work. Ethan, who had always been rational and cautious, became more reckless and distracted. He made bolder business decisions, sometimes ignoring prudent advice, as if he wanted to prove something or was simply distracted by his passionate love. His work performance declined somewhat, which did not escape Adrian and the other board members. Isabella also had difficulty maintaining her role as the perfect wife, the powerful and calm woman. She became more restless, more irritable, and sometimes showed unusual emotions in front of Adrian. The stress of constantly lying, acting, and being on guard all the time was physically and mentally draining for her. Her gaze towards Ethan at public events sometimes contained a warmth or worry that observant eyes could see. The risk of being discovered always hung over their heads like a sentence. There were times when they were almost caught. Adrian suddenly changed his schedule, returning home earlier than expected when Ethan and Isabella were together in the library. A security guard loyal to Adrian happened to see Ethan's car parked near the secret apartment late at night. An affectionate text message Ethan sent to Isabella was almost read by his assistant. Each narrow escape added to the dangerous excitement, but also deepened the fear in their hearts. Adrian Vance was not someone who was easily fooled. With his suspicious nature and habit of controlling everything, he began to notice unusual signs. Ethan's change in attitude, Isabella's inexplicable distance, the inconsistent explanations of their schedules. All of it raised suspicion in his heart. He felt like there was a conspiracy going on behind his back, a betrayal that he could not accept. He began to pay closer attention, asking probing questions, and even did not rule out the possibility that he had secretly hired a private investigator to follow his wife and son. Not only Adrian, but others also began to suspect. Marcus Thorne, an elderly board member, Ethan's hidden rival in succeeding Adrian, noticed the unusual relationship between Ethan and Isabella. He saw this as a golden opportunity to overthrow Ethan and seize power. Marcus began to collect information, hint to other board members, and wait for the right moment to launch a fatal blow. Pressure from all sides made the relationship between Ethan and Isabella tense. Guilt, fear, and jealousy. Ethan was jealous of Adrian, or Isabella was jealous of other women around Ethan, began to cause cracks. They had heated arguments in secret meetings, blaming each other for their recklessness, for the uncertain future of their relationship. The initial passion is now tinged with despair and bitterness. The taboo fire is burning fiercely, not only warming but also starting to consume those involved and threatening to reduce the entire Vance family to ashes. The secret cannot be hidden forever, and the ticking time bomb is counting down to the moment of detonation. The fallout comes faster and more devastatingly than Ethan and Isabella could have imagined. Adrian Vance, with his network of information and power, finally has irrefutable evidence of the affair between his wife and son. It could be photos from a private investigator recording their secret meetings, intimate text messages that have been exposed, or he himself has set a trap and caught them red-handed. Adrian's rage is like a volcanic eruption, devastating. He does not scream or lose control. His anger is cold, cruel, and calculated. He felt the most painful betrayal by two people he had trusted, albeit in different ways. The pride of a powerful man was severely damaged. The consequences were almost immediate. Adrian called an emergency board meeting, presented the evidence, and demanded that Ethan be removed as CEO for serious, unethical behavior that damaged the company's reputation. With his power and influence, he easily achieved his goal. Ethan lost everything in one morning: his position, his power, and the career he had worked so hard to build. For Isabella, Adrian's revenge was even more bitter. He did not divorce her immediately. Instead, he froze all her assets, cut off all her financial resources, stripped her of all her roles in the charity, and isolated her from the high society she had been a part of. She became a prisoner in her own luxurious mansion, facing the contempt and coldness of the husband she had betrayed. The Vance family scandal became the focus of the media. The reputation built over many generations collapsed overnight. Vance Corporation's stock plummeted. The family was completely broken. Ethan was disowned by his father, kicked out of the house with nothing. Isabella lived in captivity and humiliation. The secret fire had truly burned everything. Facing the ashes of their lives, Ethan and Isabella finally had the chance to meet again. Perhaps a final meeting full of pain and regret, secretly arranged by a loyal remaining friend. They sat across from each other in a small, unfamiliar cafe, no longer with the usual splendor. Ethan looked tired and haggard. Isabella was haggard, her once beautiful eyes now sunken and sad. "What have we done, Ethan?" Isabella whispered, her voice cracking. Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked at the woman he had loved so deeply, the woman he had lost everything for. That love, though intense, was also toxic and destructive. "We let our passion cloud our judgment, Isabella," he said slowly, his voice full of bitterness. "We burned our world down." They were silent for a long time, realizing that there was no future for them. Their love, though real, had been built on betrayal and guilt and could not survive this mess. The initial intense attraction was now replaced by pain and regret. Maybe this is the end, Isabella said, tears streaming down her cheeks. We can't be together anymore. This relationship has only brought destruction. Ethan nodded, his heart aching, but he knew she was right. You're right. We need to go our separate ways, find our own peace, if we can. They looked at each other one last time, their eyes filled with regret, pain, and a hint of the dying flame of passion. Then they stood up, turned their backs on each other, each walking in a different direction in the heart of the strange city. There was no happy ending, no healing or forgiveness. Only the ashes of a once mighty family remained, and two people forever haunted by a secret, a forbidden love that burned their lives. It was the price to pay for crossing impassable boundaries, a bitter lesson in passion, power, and the inevitable destruction when the heart betrays the most sacred bonds. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more meaningful stories.